Hey, how's it going? Intro's gonna be short on this one because I gotta show you a demo of what this thing actually does, and you need to hear it to do that. So I'm just gonna say, this isn't just about showing you how to play music in GameMaker, but it's about making an actual system that will help you swap songs easily and make playing music in your game really easy. I go over basic audio stuff as well, but there's a reason that the video is a little bit longer, but it's not very complicated, and it'll fit into any game that you have, any pre-existing project. So when we start, I'm gonna have a pre-existing project, but it's literally just a player that can walk around and move between rooms. It's basically totally identical to my How to Make an RPG series, but like I said, this will work completely independent of anything else you already have. So, yeah. Oh, and if you want this project file or you want the little demo songs that I use in this video, there's a tier on my Patreon that will get you the project file download and all the assets that I use and show you throughout the video. And I have tiers on Patreon where you actually could have gotten this video a little bit early. So anyways, good luck. Okay, so first a quick little demonstration rundown of what the system's going to actually do. So first we're in a room that has no music. And if we walk into a room that is assigned to have some music, then we get some music. Pretty cool. Pretty much the base level of what you would want it to do. But this is going to kind of work where we assign like different rooms to different areas. So this is like an indoor area, right? So if I walk into another room that is also indoors, you see the music doesn't change. It just keeps going. And that's really cool. And then I got a couple testing things here, but I'll show you that in a second. So now if we walk into like a different area, what we're going to see is the music will fade out and then the new track will fade in, and we can actually control how fast the fade out and the fade in for the new track is every time we transition. So I'll show you different versions of it, but here, listen to this. Very nice, yeah? So pretty cool. You saw that there was a long sort of fade out and kind of a fade in for this song, which I think is pretty appropriate for like walking into an ethereal sounding snowy area or something like that. But if you see, if we go back the other way, the fade out's going to be really fast, and then once this music is faded out, the indoor music just starts. It doesn't fade in. So yeah, pretty cool. And, you know, we have it set up to where this stuff automatically happens whenever you walk into new rooms or, you know, new areas or whatever. But the way we'll have it set up is we'll have a function that at any time we can tell the game to swap to a new song, how fast the old song should fade out, and how quick the new song should fade in. So, for example, if you had like a cutscene object or just an area where you wanted the music to change halfway through it, you could do something like this. So this one to the right will do this. So that was a kind of short fade out and an immediate start for the ice music. And if I walk into the ice music area right now, it still continues to play because it knows it's supposed to be the same song. And then obviously restarting the room will give this effect again. So that's pretty cool. And then this one above here is an example of how we can turn our fade in and fade out times to 0 and just have it be immediate. So if I walk onto this, it just immediately cuts to the next song. So pretty cool. Really, really nice. It's good for atmosphere and stuff like that, being able to control the fade in and fade outs. Like I said, it's pretty different walking out here as opposed to in there. But we'll also have it set up to where we can go from an area with music like this into an area that's not supposed to have any music. And, you know, for, again, like atmosphere or something, if you walk into an area with no music, maybe you want to have like a really long sort of fade out. So like this. So it wasn't super long fade out, but it was, you know, we could make it as long as we want to, but it was just long enough to where like you sort of settle into the atmosphere of a no music room, something like that. And then, you know, it works the same in the opposite direction. So pretty cool. Yeah, so this system is really great. Works for a lot of things. You can incorporate it with like cutscene systems or, you know, like invisible blocks like I showed you. And at its core, it's got like this sort of really easy to set up automatic way where you just assign songs to rooms and like the qualities that the songs are supposed to have. So pretty cool. So let's just move on to actually adding it in our game. All right, so as I mentioned in the intro, this system will fit into any project you have. So I just have a baseline project here. It's just got a player, some walls, stuff to warp between rooms, different rooms, all that stuff. So none of this that I already have is necessary. All this stuff is basically the exact same thing as from my How to Make an RPG series. So yeah, first things first, let's talk about adding songs into our actual GameMaker project. And let's discuss a couple things first. So I'm going to right click, create sound, and we have our new little sound asset here. And I'm just going to go ahead and name it song. This first one is going to be my indoors song. And before we talk about any of this, let's just go ahead and locate our actual audio that we want to add in. So you're just going to want to navigate to wherever your actual song file is. The thing I'm going to mention really quickly is whenever GameMaker compiles your project, it basically goes back through the path that you choose. So for me, this is going through my DAW, and then it finds the file, and then it uses that to add it into your project whenever it's actually like compiling, right? So for my bigger projects and stuff like that, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll create a special folder inside, like I'll go to like Documents, GameMaker Studio 2, I'll open up the actual project file, and I'll add my own folder in there, and I'll call it like My Audio or something. And that's where I'll put all the audio I want to put in the game, so that way the path never changes. So basically, you just want to put your audio in a folder where you know its destination is not going to change, and it's probably best to keep them all in the same folder. So basically, you probably don't want to just go, link the path directly to just like your downloads folder or something like that, right? But anyways, so I'm assuming you have your own music, because otherwise you probably wouldn't be watching this video. If you don't, or you just want little demo tracks that I'm using, there is a tier on my Patreon where you can get the project file and all of the assets for this video, and you can download it there. But anyways, okay, so let's talk about file types. You'll see here, I've got a couple tracks that were just like little testing tracks, but I have demo track 1, I have an MP3 version, an OGG version, and a WAV version, and I have an MP3 and an OGG for my track 2. I didn't really need to do all that, but because I'm just going to be talking about these 3. So short little crash course on different types of audio. Kind of like the purest form of audio that you're basically going to get is called a WAV file. And it basically means that it is an uncompressed piece of audio, and it is completely lossless, which means it's the highest quality it can possibly be. It retains all of the information of the audio the way you originally crafted it or exported it in your DAW or whatever, right? So WAV files are the best sounding. They're uncompressed, so they don't take any time to actually load up in a game. Whenever you're like calling for an audio asset to play, WAV files will play instantaneously, which is why WAV files are really great for sound effects, because you want them to line up perfectly. But another reason you only want to use them for sound effects is because WAV files are huge. So you'll see that this right here, it is a 12-second long clip in my little box right here. It is a 12-second long clip, and it is 3.35 megabytes. That's pretty massive, and it's massive because, like I said, it's completely lossless and it's uncompressed. So you wouldn't want to save like your music as waves, because it will like just make your project huge. So the most common form of compressed audio is an MP3 file. So you can see here, it's the same file, it's 12 seconds long, but this is only 482 kilobytes. That's way smaller, like way smaller. It's also why you use MP3s for things like the music that you would store on your phone or something like that, because they don't take up nearly as much space, and they still sound pretty great. They technically don't sound as good, but most people are not really going to be able to tell the difference. However, MP3s have a little bit of a quirk to them. So the way MP3s work whenever they compress the audio is they actually end up adding a tiny little bit of silence at the beginning and at the end of the track. I think it's both. Either way, the point is MP3s actually have a little bit of dead air, basically, on either or both sides of the track, which means that they don't loop properly. Now, you probably wouldn't know this because a lot of MP3 players and audio players, whenever they're playing MP3 files, they actually know how to compensate for that. So if you're listening to some progressive rock album on your phone that has like seamless song transitions and stuff like that, and you don't hear a slight pause in between the songs, it's because the player actually just knows how to deal with that little bit of space that's added into MP3s. GameMaker is not like that. And what GameMaker really likes is OGG files. I don't think I've ever actually heard someone pronounce this, so I'm just going to assume people call it OGG. Now, similar to MP3s, this is also a compressed file. However, you'll see that it's even smaller. An MP3 of this size is 482 kilobytes. This is 322 kilobytes. And not only that, OGGs actually, they actually have a little bit better sound quality than MP3s in the first place, and they don't add that silence. So this is pretty much the audio format that you want to have your tracks in. So for example, my audio program I use is Studio One. It just gives you the option whenever you export it or save a song, you can save it as a WAV or an MP3 or an OGG file. And I'm sure pretty much every DAW has the option to export to this. And there's probably some like conversion softwares or whatever that can convert other files into this format. And if you were to use one of those, I would assume you would probably need to start with a WAV file since it's totally lossless and it doesn't have the added space of an MP3. So you'd probably want to start with a WAV and then convert it to this. Either way, this is the type of file you want to use. So I'm going to open this up and make sure it plays really quick. Okay, it plays. And now we can talk about these settings down here really quick. Similar to how I was talking about, you want to use waves for sound effects. and you want to use this format, the OGG format for music, this attribute settings is pretty important. The short of it is for music, you're going to want to use compressed streamed, and for sound effects, you're going to want to use uncompressed not streamed. At least that's what seems to be the consensus. That's what I do. I won't go too far into that, but basically, as I mentioned, any kind of compression will potentially add a little bit of delay whenever the sound effect initially starts. If it's something like starting a song that will eventually loop, you will not notice it. However, for something like sound effects, compressing them would probably mean that they're like delayed by a couple frames, which you will immediately be able to tell something like that, and it'll just feel terrible and it'll look terrible and sound terrible. So basically just using these two options, make sure everything works the right way, and we're saving as much space as possible by compressing longer music. So anyways, we can just move on from this part now. And then lastly, we have our target options section. And this is just where you want to match the settings of how you initially exported your audio, right? So is it a mono sound effect, as in, is there just a center channel for it, or is there a left and right channel so it's in stereo? Can't imagine any of your music is not going to be stereo, meaning that there are individual left and right channels. But if you don't really know this information for whatever reason, like I said, chances are you do because you're probably writing your own music. But regardless, you can just go to the file, you can right click it, go down to properties, go over to details, and you'll get a lot of this information. So here's my bitrate. Because this is an OGG file, and to be honest with you, I'm not super familiar with the inner workings of them. I need to learn more about it, but point is, bitrate, got a little bit of a strange looking number here, but you get things like channels, which it'll tell you right here. If you have two channels, it's going to be stereo. If you have one channel, it's going to be mono. And then you get your audio sample rate. Mine is 48K. The two most common ones you're going to be seeing is 44.1K and 48K. So once you know all that, you can just fill that out and match it. So again, mine was 48K here. I said my bitrate was really high. You can either match the bitrate to exactly what it was, or if it's higher like mine, just pick a decent high number. And same for quality. As far as I'm aware, these two settings are more important for like wave files and sound effects, because when you export a wave, you can export to 8-bit, 16-bit, 24-bit, stuff like that. And when you export MP3s, you can select bit rates and things like that. So yeah, basically just get it pretty close. The main thing that's really important is getting whether it's stereo or mono correct in your sample rate, and then setting music to compressed streamed. So anyways, now let me just show you really quick the music looping, and the way that this plays in the editor here is exactly how it will end up playing in the game. So only 12 seconds. So a perfect seamless loop. You'll see it jumps a little bit, but that won't actually happen in game. So perfect loop. And now I can just show you really quick, like what the MP3s would do there. So yeah, you heard that like stuttering and that little pause. Yeah, so not very good. So cool, I'm gonna add one more song in so it makes testing a little bit nicer for us. So I just added this one and called it Ice Area. Same process. And now we're ready to really start. So let's create a new object, and we're gonna call it Music Manager. And this will be a persistent object. Don't forget to do that because it's gonna manage our music for the whole game pretty much. And let's go ahead and open up a create event. So first, let me just show you the main sort of function for playing audio. It's just audio play sound, like this. So first we pass in a sound ID. So let's just do song indoors. Then it asks for a priority, and this is basically a number. I think you can do like 0 to 1 or like 0 to 100 or 0 to 10. I generally do 0 to 10. And I think it basically just means like if you have a bunch of audio playing, which sounds should take priority over other ones. So GameMaker can kind of like decide, say if for some reason there's too many instances of sound playing, the one we're trying to play isn't that important. So as far as background music is concerned, I generally put background music at kind of a low priority, so I guess like 4 or something, and then sound effects I'd put it like a 10. Because sound effects normally serve like pretty important gameplay purposes and stuff like that, and it kind of feels weird when sound effects don't play. I've never run into an issue where a sound has had to actually take priority over another one or something like that, so I don't think it's too important. So I just set this to like 4. I'll set something I deem to be slightly more important to 8, and then something that's very important to like 10. I don't think it makes too much of a difference. And then you say whether or not you want it to loop. And for music, we'll say, yep, we want it to loop. And that's that. We have some other optional stuff here like gain, which is basically the volume. We have the offset, which is at what point in the track time-wise should we start the song. We have pitch, which means you can change the pitch, which is really cool. And then lastly, we have the listener mask, which I will not lie to you, don't really know what that is. It's definitely something I need to look into more. And you can too if you want to. However, we're only going to be using these 3 for this system. And you'll see why later, because, when it comes to like volume and stuff, there's actually separate functions for it that we can use. So we're going to be using those, and you'll see why. But yeah, so if I just plop this right into the starting room here, this music manager, and just hit play, it should just immediately play my indoor song, and it should loop. Oh, and I got a little error here. Failed to convert audio file for this song. It says source file does not exist. This happened to me before, and I believe there's a couple things we can try. So hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, I literally just chose the file again, and it worked. So you can try that. You can also try, if you have this issue, you can also try cleaning your game with the little broom icon. You can also try maybe switching your file to uncompressed, not streamed first, compiling and running your game, and then if it works fine, then switch it back to compressed. But anyways, it was immediately fixable for me. So anyways, let's see. Yeah, so our song's playing, and we can wait a bit for it to actually loop, which is why I picked pretty short demo tracks. But let's listen. All right, perfect loop. No stuttering or anything like that. Works great. So perfect. So this is the main function that we're going to use to actually play our sound. And this is pretty cool because it also does one other thing. Now, you should probably know this about GameMaker if you're looking into music stuff at this point, but whenever you create objects in GameMaker, they have unique instance IDs, which you could store in like a variable. So I could say, like, if I wanted to create a wall object, I could say wall instance equals instance create depth, and then just, 0 coordinate, 0 depth, and create an object wall. And this will create a wall, and we'll be able to reference that very specific wall object we created with this variable. Sound also works the same way. You can create different instances of a sound. So we could, for example, have a variable called song instance, and then use it as audio play sound, and then we can manipulate that specific instance of sound. So that's really good for whenever we want to like change the volume of a sound, but we don't want to change like the gain of the actual asset, because I believe that is something you could do. I could use the function audio sound gain to literally turn down song indoors, and it would literally turn this fader down. So the next time song indoors got played, it would be at this volume. So you don't really want to do that. What you want to do is get a very specific instance of the sound that you're playing and then manipulate that. So now that we have the very basics set up, let's just do our first little bit of create event. So we're going to make a variable called song instance, and we'll just set it to no one, which is generally used for instance IDs, believe, but essentially I think it's just -4. It's just a negative value. You could also set it to -1 if you wanted to, but I like to use no one. So ultimately this variable is going to be the song that we start playing and that starts looping. And then to tell our system when we want to swap songs, we're going to have a variable called song asset, and we'll set that equal to no one. And a song asset is basically one of these, like song indoors or song ice area. So this will be the instance of the sound that we're playing. This will tell us which song we should create an instance of. And this variable, target song asset, this will let us know what we should swap the song to. And we can compare what our current song asset that we should be playing is and which one we want to play. And that's whenever our system will know that the song either needs to be swapped out or it doesn't need to be swapped out. So this is just info for the song we are currently playing / trying to play. So hopefully that makes sense. And before we do anything else with that, let's add a couple more. And this is going to be for the fading out and fading in variables. So I'm going to call this end fade out time. We'll just set that. This will be in frames. I'm just going to set it to 0 for now. And this is how many frames to fade out the song currently playing. Then we can have start fade in time and default that to 0 as well. This is how many frames to fade in the new song. And then we want one variable that actually is the current volume of the song that we're playing. So it will handle in the fade in, so start from 0 and then go up to 1, and that will be the main volume for our song instance here. And I'm just going to call this fade in instance volume, like that. And we'll start that off at 1, which is just full volume, the volume of song instance. So let's just work with all of this first. And basically what we'll set up is just playing a song, storing it in song instance, and having its volume fade in. So I'm going to go to a step event here. So first, let's say play the target song. And that's going to be really easy. So let's say, for example, our target song asset is going to be our song indoors, right? But we also want to be able to set it back to no one, which just tells the game not to play any audio, right? So since our target song asset can either be a song asset or can just be nothing, first we want to check if audio exists. We can check our target song asset. So that'll basically just return whether or not it is an actual song asset. Then we can play the song and store its instance in a variable. And so we could just do what we did earlier and say our song instance equals audio play sound. We want to play our target song asset. Said we could just set our priority to 4 because it's background music, and we can tell it to loop. Then since we're going to be fading this in, we need to start the song's volume at 0. So first we can just hard set it to 0 with audio sound gain, and we can pass in the sound that we want to change. So we just want to change our song instance, again, not the actual assets volume, but just the version of this song that we're playing. Then our next argument is the level. So between 0 and 1, should it be no volume, full volume? I'm going to set it to 0, and then time is in frames, and this actually will trigger a fade in or a fade out. So since we just immediately want to set it to 0, we'll just put 0 frames, so the volume is just immediately cut down. And like I said, this function can be used to fade in and out songs. We're actually not going to be using that functionality in this exact way. And the main reason we're not going to be doing that is because we're going to make the system in a way where you can actually like input a master volume and like a music volume in, and have rooms to add like settings for that in your game. And I found that whenever you have settings like that, it's best to be able to control everything with your own variables at all times instead of relying on things like a preset amount of time changing the volume from one thing to another. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but for now, let's just keep moving forward. So also under here, start the song's volume at 0. We're going to set the fade in instance volume also to 0 because, as I mentioned before, this variable is going to be the volume of song instance overall. So we've played the song and muted it immediately. So now we can come down here and have a section called volume control. And I'm going to call this main song volume. And so let's control our main song's volume. Similarly to having to check for the audio existing, sometimes we may turn the song off, so there may not be any music playing. So let's just check if audio, then we can fade the song in. And we also have the option of immediately starting the song. So we're going to do a little check here. We're just going to say, as long as our start fade time is greater than 0, then we can fade this volume in. So we want to take this from 0 to full. So we'll say if our fade instance volume is less than 1, then we can take our fade instance volume, say plus equals 1 divided by our start fade in time. So remember, our start fade in time is in frames, and our volume is going to be either 0, 0%, or 1, 100%. And so if we just add 100% divided by however many frames we want to add it, that gives us the appropriate speed. And because we're doing it like this, we're doing 1 divided by the certain number of frames. This should always end up as just 1. It should never overshoot it. But if you're like me and you get scared of everything all the time, you can say if it's not less than 1, then we can just hard set it to 1. So if it's greater than or equal to 1, then it's 1. Like I said, this should not be necessary at all, but I did it anyways. And so the other option is if our start fade in time is 0, then we can do this. We can just immediately set our fading ins volume to be 1. So I'm going to say immediately start the song if the fade in time is 0 frames. So cool. We've set the variable, and now we can use our audio sound gain again to actually properly set the volume. So say actually set the gain, and that'll look like this. We'll say audio sound gain again, set our song instance. And now the level that we want to get is going to be our fade in instance volume, going from 0 rising up to 1 over X amount of frames. And because this volume is what's changing, our time, we're going to set it to 0. So we're just going to be immediately setting it to this. We're manually fading in. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but now I'll sort of talk about why we do that. So the way this works right here, our fade in time, so our time argument for the audio sound gain is from whenever I call audio sound gain, it will start fading in from that point. So for example, if I just said, 60 seconds, or 60 frames, so 1 second. And we'll just say, we know our song started at 0 because we set it to 0 up here. What if we just wanted to turn it to full volume over the course of 1 second? Well, this code actually wouldn't work right here because this is setting it every single step. So every step of the game, it's saying in 1 second, we should fade all the way up to 1. However, every single frame, it's saying in 1 second, in 1 second, in 1 second, we'll get to 1. So if you want to use the fade in functionality of audio sound gain, it needs to be in a moment where you call the function and it's not getting called anymore. So in that sort of case, everything seems like it should be totally fine. But the reason we want to be setting it every step and have full control over that, like in this scenario with all this work that we did, is because say we have a global variable that's called like global.music volume, right? And that's set from 0 to 1. And that's like an option in like your game menu. If you're playing your game and your music is playing and then you pause the game and go into your settings, normally you're not going to stop the music also, it's just going to keep playing. So mid-song, this number could technically be changed. For, like say the player wants to have the music go down to half the volume it's at, so they change this to 0.5 in some setting or something, but the music is already playing. That's why you need this to be set every step. So you could say, it needs to be the fade in volume, and you would like multiply that times a global music volume, and then it will immediately set the volume properly. Otherwise, if you only checked for a global music volume in like the same exact instance, you would set it to 0 and then you would set it to 1 over, 60 frames or whatever. It means that changing your global music volume wouldn't actually change the volume of the music that was currently playing just every time you changed the song, which just isn't how it should work. So this is sort of how we want that to work. So let's keep that there. I'm also just going to do one more thing. I'm going to create a local variable called final volume, and we're going to set that equal to our global.music volume. So we are going to probably move this. We're going to put this somewhere. And since this is a persistent music object anyways, we can go ahead and put this like in the create event, global volume control. So we can set our music volume. We can set it to 1 for now. And we can add our final volume to right here. This is doing the same thing, but the reason that we might want to abstract this out is because we could also have something like, we could have a music control volume, and we could have like a global master volume control, right? And these could be 2 completely different settings. And so we could just multiply these 2 together and in turn multiply them times the volume that we want to get. And that's how we can sort of include that check. And just for neatness sake, I'm just going to put that at the very tippy top here. Okay, so that was a lot. And there's actually one problem. There's one thing that I forgot to do. And that's right under this section here, the play the target song. We need to add one more check around it and one more variable change, because right now it's happening before I even run it, because it'll probably sound terrible. So don't run your game right now. We're playing a new song if our target song exists, right? But we're doing that every single frame. So we need to add one more check. So we need to say if our current song asset is not equal to our target song asset, then we can play the song right here, play the song. And inside of this check, but outside of the audio exists check, we can say set the song asset to match the target song asset. So song asset equals target song asset. There we go. So just to walk through it really quick, let's go to our create and say we want so our target song, we want to be our song indoors. Change this to whatever song you want to play. Your song instance and asset both need to stay as nothing, so there's no song playing. And if we want to, we can also mess with our start fade in time, right? Because we're actually using that down here. We could have it set to 0. We could also change it to another number just to check. So I'm going to set it to 120, which is 2 seconds. If you added in your master volume and your music volume, make sure that those are at 1 so that they're at full volume right now. And so now what should happen is we'll load it up. Our target song asset is telling us to play song indoors, but the current song asset that we're playing is set to no one. So then this code will run. We'll make sure that this is actually a song, target song asset. And then if it is, then we'll play the sound and store it in an instance, turn its volume all the way down so that we can fade it in. And then after that, regardless of whether or not target song asset exists, we're going to set the song asset to be the target song asset. Because again, our target song could technically be nothing, no one. And if that's the case, then we also want to set our song asset to be that. So we don't want this code to keep running until we're trying to do something different than what's already happening. And then after that, if there is a song actually playing, we fade the volume in, and then every frame we set that volume. So let's see what happens. All right, so our song started. It faded in over the course of 2 seconds. Sounds pretty good to me. So if you wanted to, you could, swap out any song here, test that out. We can test this out. So set the start fade time to 0, which means once we run our game, the song should just start immediately. All right, pretty good. So yeah, looking pretty good. So we've got the code down to actually play the song. That's great. Now the other half of the thing that we need to consider is if there was already a song playing, now we need to fade that song out so that there's not 2 songs blaring over each other. And that'll pretty much be that. So let's go back to our create event, and I'm going to add a section and say for fading music out and stopping songs that are no longer playing. And to clarify what I mean by that, if you fade a song out and its volume goes all the way down to 0, that doesn't mean that it stops playing. It just means that its volume is off. So we're going to be fading our songs out, and we're going to be turning them off when we don't need them anymore. So the way I chose to go about doing this is has maybe slightly more utility than you'll probably need, but I'm just going to kind of show you the logic and process that I decided to use for it. And then I'll talk to you about why I decided to do it this way, but I think this is cool, and I think this is a decent little learning experience, right, class? So we're actually going to create 3 different arrays here, and I'll tell you what each one is. So first, we're going to name one called fade out instances, and that will be an array, so set that equal to array create 0, so an empty array. And this is going to be the audio instances to fade out. And the reason I want this to be an array is because under some pretty specific circumstances, it may not happen for your game, but it can happen with this system if we choose to let it happen, which is multiple songs may be fading out at the same time. So like say that you walk into a room, you have two rooms, they both have really long fade out times for the previous song, but short like fade in times. You could either wait for the song to completely fade out before playing the new song, or you could just play the song whenever the next room starts and just have the fade out kind of trail over it a little bit. And say if you wanted to do it that way, if you walked up and down between the rooms really fast, there might be a couple different instances of the songs like starting to fade out on top of each other. And so this will just stop that from like being choppy and weird and stuff like that. So anyways, like I said, we'll talk about it when we get there. So fade out instances. So that's just going to be a list of songs that are fading out. And then we also want a fade out instance volume. Oopsie, volume. And this is just going to be an array that lines up with the instances for the volume that each one should be, because we're fading them each out individually. So that's the volumes of each individual audio instances. Audio instance, that's wrong. And then the last thing that we need is our fade out instance time. And that's just how fast the fade out should happen, right? It's the same thing that we're doing up here with the fading in. So anytime a song needs to fade out, we're going to add its ID to this array, add its current volume to this array, and then add the amount of time that we need to use to reduce this volume. So it's just 3 pieces of information per song, and that's all there is to it. So we can go back to our step event now, and we can start adding some stuff. So literally, like I just mentioned, the thing that we want to do is whenever we're swapping songs, we need to get all that information for the old song playing in order to fade it out. So we can say, tell the old song to fade out. So first we want to check if there actually is a song even playing in the first place. So if audio is playing our song instance, first, we want to add our song instance to our array of songs to fade out, like I said a minute ago. So we can just use the function array push, which first it takes an array. So we want to add to our fade out instances array. And then we can add a value to it. So that is going to be our song instance that is currently playing right now. Next, we want to add the song instance's starting volume, so that way there's no abrupt change in volume. So let's look at that. Let's say array push. We're going to add to our fade out instance volume. And basically, we just want to set this fade out volume to just go ahead and match the volume song instance is currently at, right? Because we want it to seem seamless. We don't want it to suddenly jump up to 100% volume if, for example, you swapped songs in the middle of one fading in and it only got to half volume. So we can just take our volume here for our audio sound gain because we just want it to match. So we can just push in our fade in instance volume to this array. Pretty easy. And then lastly, we want to add the fade out instances fading out frames. So that's just going to be array push fade out instance time. And this is finally where this variable comes into play over here, our end fade out time. Because remember how this system is going to work is in the same breath, we're going to tell our system what song we should be playing, how fast the current song should start fading out, and how fast the new song should fade in. So we'll be setting all 3 of these at the exact same time every time we want to swap a song. And so this value will always be the correct value that we want to fade out whatever song is currently playing. So that will be end fade out time. So cool, we've added all that information that we need. And now we just need to really quickly reset the song instance and song asset variables, right? Because as of up to this point, regardless of what happens down here, up to this point, we now shouldn't have a song instance anymore because it's basically been copied over to our fading out instances. So our song instance is going to equal no one. Now, if there happens to be a target song asset that we can play after this, then it will be set down here. But if there isn't, then we can just keep this at no one, because that basically just means that we've asked our music system not to play any music at that point. And same for our song asset is also now currently no one. I'm going to talk about this in one more second really quick, but first we need to add one more thing around this little area of code. So for now, let's just set it up to where the only time we want to start the new song playing is if all the other songs, which in this case would just be a single song, is done fading out. We don't want the songs to overlap right now. So I'm going to change this comment to play the song if the old song has faded out. And basically the way we're going to do that is, like I said, we're going to go down here in a second and we're going to talk about the volume control for the fading out stuff. But what's going to happen is once a fade out instance's volume has been set to 0, we're going to like remove the fade out instance from this array and all this other information from these arrays for each song that's done fading out. We're going to stop the song and then get it out of the array. And what that basically means is if the array length of our fade out instances is equal to 0, that means that that there are no entries in our fade out audio instances, then that means everything is done fading out and there's no longer a song playing. Then we can check if there is a song to play. We should play a new song and tell this big block of code that our current song asset is now our target song asset, right? And so the reason we have to like reset our song instance and song asset up here is, let's say we walk from one room where we have song indoors playing, and then we walk into the ice area and we want to play song ice area. Our game will suddenly recognize that our song asset, which is indoors, is not equal to the ice song. So first what it's going to do is take any songs that we are currently playing, so our song instance, and we're going to add it to this array. But say, it'll take us another 60 frames for this song to finish fading out. We only change the song once the song is done fading out. So if it takes us 60 frames to get to this part of the code, our song asset still isn't equal to our target song asset. So for 60 frames, it'll just keep adding the song that we're currently playing to the fade out array for it, which will cause issues. So that's why we have to reset the song instance. So there is no longer a song technically playing. It's just a fade out version of it that's playing. And because there's no song playing, we'll say our song asset is equal to no one. Then we can wait as long as we want to for all of the fade outs to be done. Then we can play a song. And if we start playing a song or there's not a song to play, our song asset will now equal our target song asset. And we will be done with this part of the code, the actual transitioning. So hopefully that all made sense. I hope I don't go like too slow and get too explainy. I feel like sometimes that can be kind of counterintuitive, but hopefully that makes sense for you. The good news is we are done with this top half of the code because that was all of the main actual swapping part. Now we just need to actually, finish fading out the songs that we have added to our list of songs to fade out. And it's going to be like the exact same principle as fading in the song that we're trying to play. So I'm just going to tab that out, and I'm going to create a new little section under here. And this is fading songs out. And so since we're using arrays, we're going to use a for loop here to go through our array. So this also just means that this code won't run if our array is empty. So we can say for var I equals 0. I is less than our array length of our fade out instances. And then we can say I plus plus and add our brackets here. So if you don't know what for loops are, I cover them in a few different videos. I cover them in the menu system video. It's pretty integral for that. But a really quick explanation is a for loop will take us through an array or like a list of some kind. So we can check everything inside of that list before we move on to code after this. So you'll see there are 3 parts here. First, you just have an establishing local variable for a value to start at. Since, for example, if we had 5 pieces of audio playing, it would look like this. Array, 0 equals 1 song. Array 1 equals that, array 2, 3. That's how that works. So we just start at a default value. We want to start at the beginning of our list. So we start at 0. And then we'll say as long as our value of I is less than the length of our array. So in this example, the array length would be 4. So as long as I is less than 4, we will run any code that we have in here. And then we will add 1 to I. Plus plus is basically like saying plus equals 1. So that basically means that if we say fade out of I, then that means every time we run through this, it'll be 0 at one point. So we'll have this value, and then it will be 1, and then 2, and then 3. And then since it will no longer be less than 4, we'll just move on with the code down here. So that basically just means that we can do the code for all of these at once. If you need more info on for loops, then definitely watch my menu system video. I explain it a little bit slower, but anyways, assuming you are comfortable with this now, let's fade the volume. And it's going to look basically exactly like this, just instead of trying to get up to 1 here and here, we're going to be trying to get down to 0. So it's going to look super similar. So first, we're going to say if our fade out instance time of our current loop is greater than 0, then like I said, instead of trying to go up to 1, we're going to try and go down to 0, but it's going to look very similar. So that'll be if our fade out instance volume of our current loop is greater than 0, then from our volume, we can subtract 1 divided by our fade out instance time of that current loop. So awesome, we're just bringing it back down to 0. And much like this one up here, if we have a certain amount of time that we want to set something, then we subtract, but otherwise it's set to 0. So we just want to immediately set it to full volume up here. We're just going to do the opposite. So immediately cut volume to 0 otherwise. So if our fade out instance time is equal to 0, then we can just immediately set our fade out volume to be 0. Easy. And then like up here, we need to actually set the gain once we have that value. So actually set the gain, audio, sound, gain. We're going to be setting our fade out instance gain of this loop to be the fade out volume of said loop. And just like up here, we want to compensate for whatever the player's volume settings are on. So we'll multiply that times our final volume, and we want to set that immediately. So it's basically the exact same thing as how we set the volume for our main song instance. We're just setting it for all the songs that should be fading out, which again, in our case, shouldn't be more than one. But again, I'll show you why we set it up this way, and why, more than anything, why I'm showing you how to set up something this way. But yeah, so we're not totally done. We got to add one more thing down here, because like I said, songs don't just stop whenever their volume hits 0. It's still playing. It just won't be audible to us. So stop the song when its volume is at 0. And we'll say and remove it from all arrays. Because remember, we got 3 different arrays here. We've got the sound instance, we've got the volume that we're setting it at, and we've got the amount of time that we're cutting that one down. So let's just do that very simply. We're just going to say if our fade out instance volume for our current loop is less than or equal to 0, we can stop the song. So if audio is playing, I think in this instance, the audio should always be playing, but it's good to do these checks just in case something gets a little weird. So if our fade out instance audio is playing, we can just do audio stop sound, and we'll stop our audio instance from playing. So the song has been stopped. We can say remove it from the arrays. And to do that, we can use a cool function, array delete, which lets us delete an entry from an array at a certain position. And we know what position that we want to delete. It's the one that we're checking for currently. So that's pretty easy. So first we want to check our fade out instances. We'll delete the entry on the current loop that we're on. And then number is how many entries to delete. So, from this point onwards, how many should we delete? We're just deleting 1, right? So just delete a single entry. We're going to do the same thing for our fade out volume. And we're going to do the same thing for our fade out time, right? And just as a cleanup, the last thing we want to do is set the loop back 1, since we just deleted an entry. So I minus minus, which is the same as I minus equals 1. The reason we want to set the loop back is because now we've technically made the whole array 1 entry shorter. So if, say there were 4 songs playing and the third one, so I equals 2, because it would be 0, 1, 2, 3. Say if I equals 2, and this one is done fading out before any of the other ones are, we're removing it from the list. But since we already checked up here for our array length, and there's still one more thing to check, our I is going to progress forward 1 more. So now we're going to run this code with I equals 3. So it's checking for the 4th entry. But now there isn't a 4th entry, because now our array length of fade out instances is only 3 long. So that would actually crash your game, because it would be looking for an entry that doesn't exist. And even if it wasn't in that case, the loop would be skipping an entry. So if it was 10 long and you just erased the 3rd entry, it would skip the 4th one, because all the entries after it would move down. So point is just subtract 1 from the I, and that way you won't skip any entries or accidentally get any crashes or anything like that. So that should really be it. Now we've got a lot of similarly named variables and arrays, and just for the nature of this system, we kind of had to do a lot of code all at once. So we're still going to have to do slightly more just in order to actually make sure that we're testing it properly. I also need to make sure that I did it properly. So we're going to move on to that. But for now, I would say go ahead and just double check and make sure this all looks right to you, that you have everything in the right place. It's a pretty common thing that I see where someone's like, I did everything exactly the same as you did in the video, and it's not working. That normally means you didn't end up doing exactly everything the same. If one thing is different, it will completely change your code. So just give it a once over. So pause and compare this, and then I'll scroll up one more so you can compare this part, which is new. We should have tested this part in the thing right below it. But anyways, just check on that really quick. And if you have an issue, you might want to come back. But anyways, let's make our music swapping function. And this is really easy. We did all the hard part now. So again, assuming everything's correct, let's go over here. I'm going to right click and create a script. Script right here. And in scripts, we can create our own custom functions. You see it gave us a blank one. So I'm going to rename this script, and I'm going to call it script music function. And so this first one I'm going to make, we're going to say function. I'm going to call this set song in game. And so now anytime we call this, it'll run this code in here, and we can add our own arguments to this just like an actual function. So before we add any code, we want some information. So these are going to be set up like local variables. So I'm going to use the same naming convention I normally use. So I'm going to say this is the song that we want to play. So it'll just be the asset, whether it's like song indoors, song ice, whatever. I'm going to call this fade out current song, and this will be the amount of frames that we fade out the current song. We can make this an optional argument and just set the default to 0. So you can just do that, which means that every time you call this, you don't necessarily have to type in this information. And we'll do the same with our our fade in time. Just set it equal to 0 for default. And then here I just added little descriptors for myself. So just setting the song, we can set any song, and we can also pass in no one in order to stop or fade the track out. And there's our fade out time in frames. If there is a song already playing, this is how long it takes to fade out, and then fade in. And to set all that, we just have to do this. We just need to go into our object music manager, right? And then very simply, we just need to set the target song asset to be our song. We need to set our end fade out time variable to be our big variable name, fade out current song. And we're going to set our start fade in time to be our fade in time right here. And so because this is in its own script and it works like a function, we can call this function at any time in the game at all, and it will set all this information for us. So cool. Let me show you how we can use that. So like I said, we're done with our step event, presumably. Let's go to our create really quick and just make sure everything is where we want it to be. So we can set everything back to default. So I'm just going to default our target song back to nothing. And I'm going to set the end fade out time and start fade in time to 0. It doesn't really matter what we set it to right now. And I'm going to set all this to being like off, basically, because our object music manager is a persistent object. If you've watched any of my videos before, you probably know what I'm about to do. But if I have persistent objects like this, you want to make sure that you don't get multiple instances of it happening. So I have it placed currently inside of my room 0. But if I walked out of my room 0, this would still, exist in my game. It would follow me around because it's persistent. But if I walked back in, there would still be one placed in this room in addition to the one that came out of the room with me and came back. So then I would have 2, and every time I walk back in. So for persistent objects like this, I like to create a startup room and call it room initialize or room init, like this. And then basically what I do is, I make sure it's just kind of at default, all the settings that I want it to be at. I make sure my viewports are enabled, invisible. I make sure all of my camera stuff matches what I want it to for this moment, for the beginning of the game. Then I'll place any persistent stuff in here on an instance layer. And in the creation code of the room, I just tell the game to immediately go to the next room. So basically, it's just a buffer room. So I go to my room order. It's very important. I go to my room order, and I put it at the very top. And this function's, exactly the same. My game will now start essentially on whatever the second entry in my room order is. So if I want to start in room 0, I just put it under the initialization room. And so any kind of like HUD objects or global objects or anything that's persistent, I always do this. And I've done this in a lot of projects so far already. So if you want to test really quick to make sure your music manager is still working and, take it out of any other rooms that it was in before, you can test this again. And so I can set my target song to be my indoor song and just have it set to start immediately. Can press play. Okay, it still works for me. If it's not working for you, then before you do anything else, I would say go ahead and put it back inside of your room that you were starting in, and then test it and make sure, none of your code messed up here in the step event. And so if you're all good with that, now I'm going to set everything back to default. And here is a very quick and easy way to set up our song switching. So I'm going to go to add event, go down to other, and add a room start event. And I'm actually going to keep this description. I'm going to say play the correct music. And you can just do that by checking what room you've entered in. So I can say if my room is equal to room inside 0, then I can set song in game. I want to set it to the indoors song. I'll fade out any old music pretty fast, just like 1 second, so 60 frames. And then I want the indoor music just to start immediately whenever it can. And since I have 3 indoor rooms, I have room inside 1, inside 0, and inside 2, I can just add these like this. I can say, or if my room is equal to inside 1, or if my room is equal to inside 2, then it will do this. And so I also have my room, my dark hallway that I don't want to have any music. I can say set song in game, and I can set this to no one to turn off the music. I can make the fade out be a long time like I showed in the intro. So we'll say 3 seconds. So I can just do 3 times 60. So I can know that that's 3 seconds easily. And the fade in time doesn't matter because the song's not playing. So I can just say 0. In fact, I don't even have to actually enter that in if I don't want to, because that's an optional argument. And then lastly, I can say, forgot to add this. So I can say if my room is equal to my room ice level, then I can set my song to be song ice area. And this is another one where I kind of want to fade out the old song a little bit slower. So we'll say 2 seconds. And then we also kind of want this one to fade in and not just start abruptly. So I'll also say there's a 2-second fade in for this new music. So if everything is done right in the step event and in our music function that we created, this should look pretty much identical to what I showed you in the beginning. So let's see. Okay, so I got a song that started immediately. Let's see. Yep, going through these other rooms. It's staying the same song. Cool, cool. And this is the ice area down here, so let's see what happens. Yeah, look at that. Pretty nice. If I walk back in, this should be a faster, a 1 second fade out and then immediately start up. Yeah, all right, and let's let this music turn on so we can check the hallway. Now look at that. Looky there. All right, so it's working. Like I said, if it's not working for you, or if you're getting an error, or something just seems weird, go back in the video and look over pretty closely with the code. I know it's like mind-numbing. It makes your eyes just burn, but it's kind of what you got to do. And we can, I can show you how like the volume works. So if I put like my master volume at like 25%, you'll see that this is going to be like way quieter. Yeah, that's really quiet. I don't really know what the volume levels are at right now in the video, but you may not even really be able to hear that. But it is playing, and it works exactly the same way. So yeah, pretty cool. If you're not hearing anything, also make sure that these are turned up to 1 and that they're all working up here. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. This room start way is a really easy way to do it, and it's also an easy way to organize it all in this area. But you could also do things like for each area you can have like a specific room type of object where, like if you have an object that controls like a parallax scrolling background or something like that for a specific area, like if you have a I don't know, a temple area where there's like a far off forest under and it's got like a parallax view, and you put that object in all of the rooms that's supposed to have that visual effect, then in the beginning of that object you can call set song in game, and it'll work exactly the same way. You can do it in cutscene objects and stuff. In fact, I'm going to show you how I did those little testy blocks from the beginning. So make yourself a sprite. I called this S music block. It's just a 9-slice sprite where I have the sides to repeat and have set this to blank repeat, so it looks like this whenever you drag it out and doesn't get all stretchy and weird looking. And let's see, I'm going to create O music block, set the sprite to be this. And I'm going to do the create event, and I'm going to say set a song. I'll just say its default will be the ice song. Say fade out frames. Say default to 90 frames, something like that. Fade in frames. We'll default that to 0. Then in our step event, we'll just say if place meeting XY with our object player, then we can set song in game to all this information. So set our song, we'll set the amount of time that it should fade out, and we'll set the fade in time. So now if I just add this over here, we'll add 2. So this one will turn the song into the ice song and have like a little bit of a fade in. And this one, I'm going to go into the create event, so I can just copy all these variables here. We'll say this one will swap to the indoors song, and we'll say it happens immediately. So no fade out and no fade in. So let's test that real quick. So if I walk over this one, it doesn't change anything because it's already playing the correct song. If I go to this one, yep, pretty good. And then this one should just automatically snap it back. Yeah, so super easy once you have it all working. Super easy, super convenient. So like I said, if you have like an object that is controlling a cutscene or something, you could put in that command at any time you wanted to. You could do it for something like this where you pass over it. You could call it from the room start event of your music manager, or you could call it like in the create event or room start event of like any kind of like room specific controller object. Anything like that. And yeah. Oh yeah, I'll do one more thing. So I promised I would explain why we did all this with arrays and stuff. As it's currently functioning, because we wait for all of our songs to finish fading out before we play a new song, we're only ever playing one song at a time. So these arrays are almost basically just variables. The array size never goes above a single song playing. However, with the way everything's programmed right now, we could literally just take out this check. So we could say play the song if the old song is faded out, or we could just play the song. We don't have to wait for it to fade out. And this is what that looks like. So it's gonna sound a little weird, but I gotta go all the way around. God. Okay, here we are. So if I walk out, now what's gonna happen is this song will start fading out, but just the moment we start the new getting in the ice area, that song will start fading in, and they'll play over each other for a little bit. So. See? Doesn't sound that bad whenever they're both fading out like that. And it gets to playing the new song faster. So let's hear it the other way. See, it doesn't really sound that bad. And maybe you have like a whole area that's like, you know, maybe you have a whole area that's like every song is in the same key or something like that, and they actually sound really good whenever they stack on top of each other for a little bit like that, and it makes it a little bit more seamless. And maybe they're just like slightly different versions of the same song or something like that. That's totally cool. So the reason we did it stacking like that is because technically I can do this. And so at some point in there, we probably got at least 3 or 4 songs stacked on top of each other. It's hard to tell, but so the array basically just means that none of those songs get cut short, or none of those songs accidentally get abandoned somewhere in the mix of swapping the song instance into the fade out instances, because if one of them gets abandoned and isn't assigned to a variable, we won't be able to control its volume anymore, which means that what could happen is like a song could be dimming itself down, but if it gets overwritten by another fading out song, that song will never finish fading out, and it will just stay at a really low volume and it'll never turn itself off. So that's why we do that. And so if you want your system to work that way, you can just take out this check. If you want it to work where it waits for the song to end, you can leave this check in, and you can also like add in your own variable for, like certain areas, if here, let me just try and add it in really quick. So in our music manager, the room start, we only have 2 songs right now anyway, so it's either going to be one or the other. But say you got like a whole bunch of songs, but let's say you want going from the inside to the ice field, you want the songs to be able to overlap, but you don't want it the other way around. So I'm going to test if this works really quick. Okay, yeah, so it works. So you could add a variable called like song overlap, and it can be something you add to your music function. So actually I'm just going to put this at the very bottom. Okay, so with our song overlap, we go into our step event, restore this. So say play the song if all songs have faded out or if it's supposed to overlap. So we can say if array length is equal to 0, or we could say if song overlap, which typing it this way is the same as just saying if song overlap is equal to true. Then we can run this code, which means start playing the next song. And then whenever we swap our song asset, no matter what, we can just always set this back to being false, since that can just be the default, I guess. It doesn't really matter. The idea is anytime we set the song, we'll probably be setting this variable anyways if we include it, so you don't really have to reset it here. But anyways, that's the only code we'd have to add aside from in our room start. So we could add another optional argument to set song in game, and we can say, do you want the song to overlap? And we can default that to being false as well. Add a descriptor. Should the new song overlap with any old songs playing? So that's kind of weird, old songs playing. There we go. And we can just set the song overlap variable to be the one that we've passed through here. And so by default, our songs will not overlap. But let's say whenever we want to go into the ice level, because it's a chill song and we already have a fade in for it, we have a 2-second fade in. So it really doesn't sound that bad if we do want to have it start playing early. So we can say true for this song overlap. And again, this one defaults to false. It wouldn't matter anyways because there's no song to play. And this one defaults to false. So we should hear it working differently whenever we go between the indoors and the ice area. Give me a moment. Okay, I'm back. So ice song is playing, and what should happen is we go inside, it waits for the ice song to stop playing, and then the new song plays. Yep, that's exactly what happened. And now the ice song should just start playing immediately, even though this song won't be done fading out. Yeah, exactly. So pretty cool. See, there's a whole other option we just added to it, just on a whim. So pretty cool. Well, that's about it. I thought this was going to be a short video. Maybe it is through editing, but I have been recording it for 3 hours now. That might just be because I'm an idiot. Okay, anyways, if you're watching this as it comes out, stick around for the outro, and I'll tell you about a couple of my plans for coming up stuff. A couple of really cool things, actually. So, have fun.
Oh, thank you for watching. It definitely hasn't been a long time. I'm definitely not sick. So get that thought out of your grubby little head. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoy the system. Hope you can use it for cool things and it makes your game more fun to make for you and more fun to play. All that good stuff. I'll try and keep this outro short. What am I working on? What's coming up next? It's been a minute since I put a video up. Well, I got a couple things queued up. One is a video essay about quality of life features in games. Gonna be really cool. It's not a tutorial or anything, but cool game design stuff. And I'll probably be focusing on just one or two games to pull examples from or whatever, but that should be out very soon after this is out. Chances are, if you're watching this, it probably already is out, so definitely check that out. And also hopefully very soon is a Mario-inspired platformer series, somewhat heavily inspired. It's pretty crazy, actually. I've done the mock-up project for it, and I went like way too far with it, but that's kind of what I always do. You see how long this video is, and it probably could have been way shorter. Clearly, that's just my style. But yeah, so that's really exciting, and that the first part of that at least should be coming really soon. And both of those things will be coming to Patreon first, just like this video did. Wow! Which is also why I'm recording this outro a little bit later, is because it's been up on the Patreon for about a week now. And sometimes I just leave videos up there for a while before I stop being lazy and actually record an outro and do the final pass and put it up on YouTube. So you can get videos kind of early. You can also help vote on future videos, which is how the Mario thing and the quality of life video thing were chosen. I'll give you guys like a few options and then say vote on a couple of these, whatever. And then if you're donating on the Patreon, you get your beautiful name up here next to all these other beautiful people on the screen right now on the left side there. And then if you want to be just the absolute coolest kid around, and if you want to get the videos early, then you need to follow the example of Nixionic, No, Joseph Sandlin, Midnight, AOGO, Christian Donovan, DT, Richard DeLuca, Arya Sparks, Arnav Kumar Baskar 2.0, Maya, Thomas Mogre, Robel, Revenaris, Epic Music of Legend, Soulbright, Stoic, Crazy Poo Chucker, Voided, Jack Pay, Kirby 745i, Adam I, Harrison, Joshua, and Space Trum. My star gamers. Thank you guys so much. The support means so much to me. Thank you for watching, everyone who's watched this video. My upload schedule is weird. Sometimes I go long periods without uploading stuff, and then, you know, something like this where I'll have a couple different videos coming out kind of at once also. My last update video is like totally inaccurate. I said my next thing would be coming after I released Starcade and would be the turn-based RPG series. But I just figured it had been so long since I put stuff up on the channel. I just needed to find a couple lower maintenance things to do than the turn-based RPG series, but easy enough for me to knock out in like a month or so. So yeah. Plus, I thought this would be a really good companion video to go with the sound effects video that I have also done. Wishlist my game, Starcross Starcade Special, if you want to. There's a link to it down below, or buy it if it's out. If it ever comes out, buy it. If you want to be ignored and neglected by me on Discord, there's a Discord down there that I do a terrible job of keeping up with. If you like the idea of me being on social media and tweeting things, or I don't know what it's called now, there's a link to that, which I don't use, to be real with you. This is probably the best place to just keep up with anything going on in any videos I make. Just subscribing, ringing that bell, whatever. So that's about it. If you're watching when this comes out, then like I said, keep your eyes and ears open for my next couple videos coming this month, pretty much. And by this month, I mean December 2023, hopefully. And otherwise, hope you're doing good. Hope you're safe and doing well. Okay, it's medicine and nap time for me. See you around, partner.